You're listening to the free ad-sponsored re-release of American Election's Wicked Game, a weekly march through every presidential election from 1789 to 2024. To listen to all episodes right now, ad-free, go to intohistory.com. Subscribers there enjoy ad-free listening, early access, bonus content, and more from a growing collection of great history podcasts. Start your free trial today at intohistory.com. It's September 11th, 2012, at a CIA outpost called the Annex in the second largest city in Libya. It's after 9:30 p.m. Two Americans sit on a couch watching a movie, relaxing at the end of a long day. They wear their casual clothes, cargo shorts and t-shirts. They look like ordinary Americans, but they're far from it. Chris Paronto, also known as Tonto, and Dave D.B. Benton are former military. Tonto was an Army Ranger, DB, a U.S. Marine Sergeant. But currently, DB and Tonto are private military contractors for the Global Response Staff, or GRS, an intelligence agency whose primary mission is to protect U.S. spies abroad. DB and Tonto, with their fellow GRS contractors, are in charge of security for CIA operations in the area. But tonight, the two men are just taking it easy, relaxing and watching Wrath of the Titans. But their movie night is suddenly interrupted by a call on a two-way radio. All GRS meet in the CP. All GRS meet in the CP. CP stands for Command Post, another name for the sensitive compartmented information facility located in the CIA Annex. DB and Tonto pause the movie and hop to their feet, but neither seem overly concerned. Well, what do you think this is all about? Oh, it's nothing. I'm sure somebody pissed off somebody. We're probably just going to get an earful. What did you do? Nothing. Oh, Tonto, what did you do? I told you I didn't do nothing. Nothing? Like the time you hung the picture of Robert Downey Jr. in the CP? Picture from Tropic Thunder? Hey, that was hilarious. But no, seriously, I didn't do nothing. Just then, the voice on the two-way radio calls out again, this time with more urgency. We need GRS in the CP now. Tonto and DB share a curious glance. Shit, something's really happening. Tonto flashes a smile. We might actually get to do something fun tonight. Tonto and DB quickly grab their weapons, suit up and head out the door. As the two men walk up to the front of the CP, their team leader meets them in the driveway outside. Hey, Chief, what the hell's going on? You two, hurry up. Consulate's under attack. Consulate is shorthand for the Special Mission Compound, a diplomatic facility in the city. It's not technically a diplomatic consulate. It's a residential outpost for American envoys, and it's close to the Annex. But before DB and Tonto get a chance to respond, they hear gunshots and explosions in the distance. And then they hear something else. A crowd chanting, amplified by someone holding a megaphone. On September 11th, 2012, the 11th anniversary of the attacks on 9/11, members of Ansar al-Sharia, a Salafist Islamist militia group, attacked two U.S. government facilities in Benghazi, Libya, an American diplomatic compound and a nearby CIA annex. The story of why the Benghazi attacks happened began back in 2011, when Libya's government was toppled by a Western-backed popular uprising. By September of 2012, though, the resulting civil conflict was over, but the country was dominated by militia groups like Ansar al-Sharia. And then on September 11th, 2012, protests broke out in multiple Muslim-majority countries. These protests were in reaction to an anti-Islam film released in the U.S. called The Innocence of Muslims. According to reporting by Vox, members of local Islamist militias in Benghazi decided somewhat spontaneously to seize on the day's protests and attack the U.S. diplomatic outpost there, assembling around its gates. After breaching the gates and setting fire to the building, a series of firefights ensued, first at the compound and then finally at the nearby CIA annex. In all, 4 Americans were killed, including American Ambassador Chris Stevens and Information Management Officer Sean Smith. Chris Tonto Paronto and Dave D.B. Benton survived, but 2 of their fellow GRU brothers did not. Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods were killed in the attack. This violent episode would be the improbable beginning of a massive political scandal that would result in 10 different investigations, 6 of which were led by Republican-controlled House committees. The House investigations would put one individual in particular in the line of fire, the presumptive Democratic nominee for the upcoming 2016 election, Hillary Rodham Clinton. From Airship, I'm Lindsey Graham, and this is American Elections Wicked Game. Prior to the 2016 election, in the minds of many, former First Lady, New York Senator, and Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton was President Obama's heir apparent. She had a strong resume, a famous last name, and plenty of experience. But in order to win the Democratic nomination in 2016, Hillary Clinton would first have to overcome the Benghazi scandal. According to various reports, the Obama administration made two major mistakes related to the Benghazi attacks: systemic failures that resulted in insufficient security in Benghazi, and a mischaracterization of how the attacks began. As the Wall Street Journal would later report, the administration immediately presented the attack as a spontaneous mob backlash to an anti-Muslim video. And in fact, only hours after the attack, Clinton had put out a statement about the violence where she mentioned the video. The following day, Clinton mentioned the video twice more. President Obama's United Nations ambassador, Susan Rice, also mentioned it while making the rounds on the Sunday talk shows. Though the initial analysis by the CIA supported the idea that the video spurred on the attack, many Republicans charged that the Obama administration purposefully downplayed the possibility of a terrorist attack because of the upcoming 2012 election. In December of 2012, Eric Boswell, the Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomatic Security, resigned under pressure, along with several other State Department officials. But in the minds of many Republicans, the Benghazi scandal did not stop with Boswell. It went all the way to the top of the Obama administration, personally involving Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. In January of 2013, Secretary Clinton testified in front of Congress and defended her actions, saying, "With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?" As The Guardian reported at the time, there was an anticlimactic feel to the hearings. After 4 months of heated demands that Clinton testify on Benghazi, the case against the administration, so steel-clad on cable news, seemed to disappear in the light of the hearing room. A month later, in February, Clinton stepped down as Secretary of State, replaced by former Democratic presidential nominee John Kerry, though her resignation was not related to the Benghazi controversy. Many speculated Clinton was stepping down to prepare to run for president. At first, Clinton denied it, but the words presumptive Democratic nominee were attached to her early and often. But the controversy surrounding Benghazi would lead to another political scandal for Clinton. In August of 2014, the State Department turned over to the House Benghazi Committee 15,000 pages of documents. Among them were 8 emails to or from then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. In March of 2015, the New York Times officially broke the Clinton email story, writing, "Hillary Rodham Clinton exclusively used a personal email account to conduct government business as Secretary of State and may have violated federal requirements that officials' correspondence be retained as part of the agency's record." Clinton justified her action, saying it was allowed by the State Department and was purely a matter of convenience. But many in the media pounced on the story. As the Baltimore Sun reported in early March of 2015, Clinton's aides turned over 55,000 pages of emails to the State Department, but it was the Clinton camp that sifted through the correspondences and decided which were relevant. A spokesman told the New York Times that Clinton had complied with the letter and spirit of the rules. That would sound dodgy coming from anyone, but coming from a member of the Clinton family, known for being secretive, that's dodgy times a million. Clinton's use of a private email server would dog her campaign from the very start, and it would give her Republican opponents a new line of attack on the campaign trail. This is episode 58. 2016, Clinton versus Trump, the Omega and the Alpha. In April 2015, just a month after the Times email story, Hillary Clinton officially kicked off her presidential campaign with a highly produced announcement video. In it, after a dozen diverse Americans talk about their plans for the future, candidate Clinton appears on screen.
I'm getting ready to do something too. I'm running for president. Americans have fought their way back from tough economic times, but the deck is still stacked in favor of those at the top. Everyday Americans need a champion, and I want to be that champion.
But in the Democratic primary, Clinton would face stiff competition from the formerly independent senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, who entered the race later that same month.
Today, with your support and the support of millions of people throughout our country, we begin a political revolution to transform our country economically, politically, socially, and environmentally.
Several other Democratic candidates would enter the contest too, but the 2016 Democratic primary would largely center around candidates Sanders and Clinton. Clinton was widely seen as the moderate establishment candidate. Sanders, a self-proclaimed Democratic socialist, appealed to the growing progressive wing of the Democratic Party. But if the Democratic Party was split between its moderate and progressive wings, the Republican Party was also divided between its moderate faction and a growing populist movement. Texas Senator Ted Cruz was the first to enter the race in March of 2015. Cruz was followed by a slew of candidates, businesspeople, doctors, senators, and governors, past and present. In all, 17 Republican candidates would enter the 2016 race. But in the midst of the crowded field, for many pundits there was one clear frontrunner, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. On June 15, 2015, Jeb Bush, the brother of President George W. Bush and the son of President George H.W. Bush, officially announced his candidacy. With his famous last name, his political experience, and a massive war chest of over $100 million, Jeb Bush was well positioned to be the frontrunner. But the day after Bush's announcement, on June 16th, New York businessman and reality TV star Donald J. Trump made a grand entrance into the Republican primary at Trump Tower in New York. With his wife Melania by his side, Trump rode down a golden escalator to the sounds of Neil Young's Rockin' in the Free World. After taking the podium, Trump addressed the crowd.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Variations of the phrase, "Make America Great Again," have been used by many past presidential candidates, including Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan, and Bill Clinton. As White House reporter Ashley Parker would later write, when Donald Trump announced his seemingly quixotic presidential bid on June 16, 2015, he upended the course of political history. At the time, though, few took Trump's announcement seriously. In a speech many called embarrassing, Trump covered a variety of topics from his personal wealth to China. To deal with illegal immigration, Trump promised to build a wall on the southern border, saying, "Nobody builds walls better than me." On the same day as Trump's announcement, Chris Cillizza of The Washington Post wrote, "Donald Trump will never be president. He knows that. We know that. But his candidacy ensures that for the next several months at least, he will suck the attention and oxygen away from the men and women who might be." And indeed, from early on in the campaign, Trump had an uncanny ability to capture attention from his friends and his enemies. It's July 8th, 2015. Author and broadcast journalist Katy Tur has just stepped foot into Trump Tower for the first time in her life. She's moments away from an important interview. As her crew finishes setting up the shot, Donald Trump's communications director, Hope Hicks, steps into the room. "Katy, 2-minute warning, he's on his way down." "Thank you, Hope." As Hope walks away, Katy does her best not to look nervous. Earlier this morning, Chuck Todd, the moderator of Meet the Press, gave her some advice. "You're NBC. He's going to go after you." And as Trump walks into the room at 10 a.m. sharp, Katy Tur steels herself for a confrontation. "Hello, Katy." The two shake hands and Katy takes her seat. Trump seems disappointed. "Don't you want a picture? Come here, Katy." Her bosses are watching the live stream back at the 30 Rock offices. She knows a smiling photo op is not a good look for an impartial journalist, but she doesn't want to offend Trump either. So awkwardly, Katy poses for the photo. Then, before they start the interview, Trump turns to his bodyguard. "How's it look, Keith? The shot look good?" As the bodyguard looks into the camera monitor, Trump makes a quip. Keith, he's my stylish/beauty consultant. Looks good to me, sir. Let me see. Flip it around. Katie watches nervously as Trump scrutinizes his look, a look Katie will later characterize as orange. But Trump doesn't seem to mind. Yeah, okay, let's go. Trump doesn't wait for a question. He starts right in. You know, my whole life has been a win. You understand that. But as Katie presses him on a variety of issues, Trump grows increasingly more frustrated. After nearly 30 combative, rambling minutes, Katie wraps up the interview. Okay, thank you, Mr. Trump. The two stand and shake hands. But then Trump explodes. You better air that interview in full. You're going to edit it. Deceptive editing. I know what you guys do. Stunned, Katie musters a polite reply. It's not up to me how much of the interview gets used, but I know we won't deceivingly edit you. If you don't air that whole interview, we have cameras in here. We'll release the full footage, and you don't want that. You stumbled 3 times. It doesn't matter if I stumble. I'm not running for president. You'll never be president. During their July interview, the subject of immigration was a major source of conflict. In his campaign announcement speech, Trump had said, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. When Katie Tur pressed Trump on the veracity of his statement, Trump turned visibly angry. After the interview aired, according to reporting by the Washington Post, Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus called presidential candidate Donald Trump and asked him to pull back his rhetoric on immigration. But Trump would lean in, and he would garner what the New York Times would later describe as billions of dollars worth of free media coverage. During the GOP primary, Trump would earn a substantial chunk of that media on the debate stage. The first Republican primary debate was hosted by Fox News in early August 2015 in Cleveland, Ohio. Early on, Trump made a splash when moderator Brett Baier conducted a survey.
Gentlemen, we know how much you love hand-raising questions. So we promise this is the only one tonight. The only one. Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight.
Of the 10 candidates on stage, Trump is the only one who raises his hand.
Mr. Trump, to be clear, you're standing on a Republican primary debate.
I fully understand.
The place where the RNC will give the nominee the nod.
I fully understand.
And that experts say an independent run would almost certainly hand the race over to Democrats and likely another Clinton. You can't say tonight that you can make that pledge.
I cannot say. I have to respect the person that if it's not me.
Washington Post reporter Chris Cillizza summed up Trump's performance, writing, his unwillingness to commit to supporting the Republican nominee should hurt him among Republicans. His general cluelessness about foreign policy specifics won't help either. But what I've learned about Trump is that his brashness and boisterousness have an appeal with a not small part of the GOP electorate. More debates followed, and through them all, Trump stuck to brashness and boisterousness, taking Trump from longshot to frontrunner. And he would do it in part by attacking Hillary Clinton over her emails. As the Times had reported in March, Mrs. Clinton is not the first government official or first Secretary of State to use a personal email account on which to conduct official business. But her exclusive use of her private email for all her work appears unusual. For Trump, Clinton's use of a private email server was more than unusual. It was controversial and perhaps even illegal. In August of 2015, Trump tweeted, 150 Clinton emails still contain classified information. This is a very big deal. In September of 2015, Clinton went on ABC. Though she claimed her actions were allowed, she did offer an apology.
That was a mistake. I'm sorry about that. I take responsibility. And I'm trying to be as transparent as I possibly can.
But many Republicans felt Clinton was not being transparent, including Donald Trump. They wanted to know the answer to a question they asked repeatedly in the 2016 campaign. Where were the missing emails? According to reporting by ABC, in late 2014, the State Department asked Clinton and other former secretaries of state to hand over any work-related emails they may have. Clinton tasked her legal team to determine which of the roughly 60,000 emails still on her server were work-related. However, she did not participate in the development of the specific process. Again, for many Republicans, this explanation was still not enough. At the first Democratic debate in Las Vegas in October 2015, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders sparred over a myriad of issues, from gun control to foreign policy. But on the question of Clinton's emails, Sanders took the high road, saying, "The American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails." It wasn't a topic he could be distracted by, because on the debate stage, Sanders was busy fending off questions about his self-styled democratic socialism.
You don't consider yourself a capitalist, though? Do I consider myself part of the casino capitalist process by which so few have so much and so many have so little, by which Wall Street, greed and recklessness wreck this economy? No, I don't. I believe in a society where all people do well, not just a handful of billionaires.
Sanders seemed determined to debate Clinton on the merits of a progressive message that had sparked a nationwide grassroots movement. But in the media, the email controversy was still front and center. A matter of days after the first Democratic debate, Clinton sat in front of the House Select Committee on Benghazi. She testified for 11 hours. In the end, despite sharp questions, according to Politico, Republicans failed to produce a palpable hit, particularly on the email question. Conservative columnist Kimberly A. Strassel saw it differently, writing in the Wall Street Journal, "Thanks to Clinton's Benghazi testimony, we now understand why the former Secretary of State never wanted anyone to see her emails. Turns out those emails show that the Obama administration deliberately misled the nation about the deadly events in Libya." The Benghazi email controversy dominated the national conversation well into the winter of 2015. And while the Clinton campaign fought to survive the scandal, the Trump campaign was picking up steam. On December 7th, 2015, Donald Trump tweeted, "Just put out a very important policy statement," a statement Trump delivered at a rally in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Many Americans were outraged at Trump's statement, wherein he also called for the surveillance of mosques. Ibrahim Hooper of the Council on American Islamic Relations stated, "One has to wonder what Donald Trump will say next as he ramps up his anti-Muslim bigotry. Where is there left for him to go? Are we talking internment camps? Are we talking the final solution to the Muslim question? I feel like I'm back in the 1930s. Many in the Republican field also expressed their dismay. Jeb Bush called Trump unhinged. Senator Lindsey Graham called for every Republican to condemn Trump, and Senator Marco Rubio tweeted, "I disagree with Donald Trump's latest proposal. His habit of making offensive and outlandish statements will not bring Americans together." But there were others with a different view. Conservative blogger and evangelical radio host Eric Erickson called Trump's proposal brilliant, adding, "All the people attacking Trump on his immigration proposals, now attacking him on this, have done themselves no favors." According to reporting by NBC News in January of 2016, with the presidential primaries in full swing, Donald Trump maintains his sizable lead over the rest of the Republican field. Among Republican or Republican-leaning registered voters, Trump has 35% support, compared to 18% for Ted Cruz. Texas Senator Ted Cruz was Trump's biggest competition going into the 6th presidential primary debate in South Carolina. In that debate, Cruz attacked Trump for his New York values. Trump hit back hard and went after Cruz using a familiar line of attack. Since as far back as 2011, Trump had been vocal in his unfounded suggestion that President Barack Obama was not a natural-born citizen of the United States. Even after Obama released his birth certificate proving otherwise, Trump continued to suggest that Obama had pulled off one of the greatest scams in the history of politics. In 2016, Trump used a similar line of attack against Cruz.
Let's get right back to the questions, and I'll start with you, Senator Cruz. Now, you are, of course, a strict constitutionalist. No one would doubt that. And as you know, the U.S. Constitution says only natural-born citizens are eligible for the office of President of the United States. Stop me if you've heard this before. Now, you were born in Canada to an American mother, so you were and are considered an American citizen. But that fellow next to you, Donald Trump, and others, have said that being born in Canada means you are not natural born, and that has raised questions about your eligibility. Do you want to try to close this topic once and for all tonight?
Well, Neil, I'm glad we are focusing on the important topics of the evening.
Cruz dismissed Trump's attacks, pointing out that Trump's own lawyers had concluded that there was nothing to the birther issue. Throughout the night, Cruz and Trump continued to trade barbs, and many pundits felt Cruz had gotten the upper hand. But days before the Iowa caucus, Trump stole back the limelight by announcing he would not participate in the 7th debate. According to reporting by the Washington Post, Trump said Tuesday he thinks Fox and other television networks have been taking advantage of him by selling advertisements for their debates at a high premium. Many pundits accused Trump of hiding from Cruz and from tough questions from the moderators. But he stuck to his guns and didn't appear. The night of the debate, Trump held a veterans rally in Des Moines and claimed he skipped the debate because he was treated badly. On the debate stage, Cruz took advantage of Trump's absence.
Let's address the elephant not in the room tonight.
I'm a maniac, and everyone on this stage is stupid, fat, and ugly. And Ben, you're a terrible surgeon. Now that we've gotten the Donald Trump portion out of the way.
Ted Cruz won the Iowa caucus with 27.6% of the vote. Donald Trump came in second with 24.3%. Jeb Bush, once thought to be the Republican frontrunner, finished in 6th place. After Iowa, the Republican field began to winnow. And going into New Hampshire, the Bush campaign was getting nervous. A WBUR poll 4 days before the primary showed Trump with a decisive lead. So at a speech in Hanover, New Hampshire, Jeb addressed a crowd of potential supporters.
So here's my pledge to you. I will be a commander-in-chief that will have the back of the military. I won't trash talk. I won't be a divider-in-chief or an agitator-in-chief. I won't be out there blowharding, talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country, to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Bush's plea for applause wasn't the only awkward moment of the Republican primary. At the 8th debate in New Hampshire, as the Washington Post reported, when the moderators introduced the candidates, it did not go smoothly. Apparently unable to hear their cues, some candidates stayed behind. Retired neurosurgeon Ben Carson lingered the longest, at one point standing beside Donald J. Trump for reasons that were not immediately clear. Eventually, everyone reached a lectern. Once properly placed on the debate stage, Trump and Bush went to blows. As the New York Times reported, like the high school bully picking on the bookish overachiever, Donald J. Trump sliced into Jeb Bush. When the crowd booed Trump at one point, Trump accused the audience of being plants, saying, "You know who has the tickets? Donors, special interests, the people who put up the money. The reason they're not loving me is I don't want their money." Trump's "I can't be bought" message resonated in New Hampshire. He won first place with 35.3% of the vote, giving him the lead in the delegate count. Cruz won 3rd place. Jeb Bush won 4th. After New Hampshire, the field got smaller again. The 9th Republican debate was set for mid-February, just a matter of days before the South Carolina primary, a contest that took on special importance because it came on the heels of the death of conservative Judge Antonin Scalia, a longtime Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. While Democrats saw an opportunity for President Obama to appoint a justice in the final year of his presidency, Senate Republicans, like Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, took a different stance. On February 13, 2016, the day Scalia died, McConnell said in a statement, "The American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice. Therefore, this vacancy should not be filled until we have a new president." According to Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, the president shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint judges of the Supreme Court. Democrats accused McConnell and the Republicans of playing dirty politics by threatening to deprive President Obama of his right to make an appointment. In the South Carolina debate, the candidates covered a myriad of topics from the Supreme Court to other hot-button issues like immigration, welfare, and Planned Parenthood. But once again, it was Ted Cruz and Donald Trump's feud that dominated the night.
I like Donald. He is an amazing entertainer. But his policies for most of his life...
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
For most of his life, his policies have been very, very liberal. For most of his life, he has described himself as very pro-choice and as a supporter of partial birth abortion. Right now, today, as a candidate, he supports federal taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. I disagree with him on that. That's a matter of principle, and I'll tell you.
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. You are the single biggest liar.
On the campaign trail, Trump would make headlines by giving Ted Cruz a nickname, Lion Ted. And 2 days before the South Carolina primary, Trump again dominated the news cycle when he publicly responded to a statement made by Pope Francis. On a visit to Mexico, the Pope called out Trump, saying, "A person who thinks only about building walls, wherever they may be, and not building bridges is not Christian." The Pope was referring to Trump's campaign promise to build a wall on the U.S.'s southern border with Mexico. Trump responded quickly. No leader, especially a religious leader, has the right to question another man's religion or faith. The media pounced on Trump's exchange with the Pope, but the coverage didn't have an adverse effect on the polls. The next day, on February 20th, 2016, Trump won all 50 of South Carolina's delegates with 32.5% of the vote. Again, Cruz came in third. And again, Jeb Bush failed to perform, coming in fourth. So after South Carolina, Jeb Bush suspended his campaign, as did a slew of his fellow candidates. David Graham, a staff writer for The Atlantic, wondered, is Trump, in fact, unstoppable now? The scenario that seemed like fantasy just a few months ago comes closer to reality. Indeed, one analysis conducted in the summer of 2015 had given Trump only a 1% chance of winning the GOP nomination. But after South Carolina, his candidacy was beginning to look inevitable. But the inevitability of Hillary Clinton's presidency was about to be put to the test. Her Super Tuesday victory over Bernie Sanders would all but guarantee her the Democratic nomination. But new revelations surrounding the Clinton email scandal would once again dominate the news cycle. Clinton would have to fend off attacks from Donald Trump, discord in her own party, and accusations that she stole the nomination. If you're a careful Wicked Game listener, you know in the credits I mentioned my friend Professor Greg Jackson and his podcast, History That Doesn't Suck. It's a great show. But one way it doesn't suck even more is when you listen to it without ads. You can listen to all episodes of American Elections Wicked Game, all episodes of History That Doesn't Suck, and all episodes of many more great history podcasts without interruption by subscribing at intohistory.com. History That Doesn't Suck is a deeply researched chronological survey of American history from a trained academic who also knows how to tell a story. Plus, in addition to ad-free listening to one of the best American history podcasts out there, you get scores of bonus episodes at intohistory.com. Subscribe now at intohistory.com. Tired of ads and promos like these? Want to skip ahead to newer elections? You can listen to all episodes of American Elections Wicked Game without interruption by subscribing at intohistory.com. But not only that, you also get access to over a dozen more incredible history podcasts, also all ad-free. That includes the American Revolution podcast, a deep and thorough investigation of the times, people, and politics behind America's fight for independence. Also, the battles, because we can't start a new American nation without guns. And the American Revolution podcast tells the story of the revolution from beginning to end, from its origins in the French and Indian War, through the war itself, and on to the founding of the United States. Get American Elections Wicked Game, the American Revolutions podcast, and many others ad-free with bonus content at intohistory.com. Subscribe now at intohistory.com. It's April 26, 2016. Two men sit together eating breakfast at a hotel in London. A professor named Joseph Mifsud and a foreign policy advisor for the campaign of Republican presidential hopeful Donald J. Trump. It's good to see you again, Joseph. Good to see you too, George. George Papadopoulos and Joseph Mifsud are not friends, not really. They first met back in March, not long after Papadopoulos found out he was about to be named a foreign policy advisor for Trump's campaign. The professor talks a big game about having connections with the Russian government. Papadopoulos knows that one of his mandates as a foreign policy advisor is to improve relations with Russia. So if there's even a chance the professor isn't completely full of it, this relationship could help Papadopoulos' standing in the Trump campaign, and it might help Trump win the election. It doesn't take long for the two men to get down to the business at hand. How are things developing with my friend in Moscow, George? So far, so good. Thank you again for the introduction. The professor recently introduced Papadopoulos to a contact who claimed to have a connection with someone in the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yeah, things are going well. We've had multiple conversations. We're laying the groundwork for a potential meeting between Moscow and the campaign. Excellent. I've let the rest of the team know there's a lot of excitement. Well, wait till they hear my news. What news? I've just returned from Moscow. And how was it? It was fruitful, George. I met with several high-level Russian government officials. I see. Did you learn anything that might be of interest? Yes, I did. The professor lowers his voice to a near whisper and leans in close. The Russians have dirt on her. George knows exactly to whom the professor is referring. Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. And this is exactly the type of information Papadopoulos is looking for. Dirt, huh? What kind of dirt? Emails, George. Thousands of emails. Well, that is certainly an interesting development. Not long after the meeting, Papadopoulos emailed a high-ranking official in the Trump campaign to tee up a potential meeting between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. A few days later, Papadopoulos emailed Mifsud to thank him for his critical help in setting up a meeting that he described as history-making. The meeting would never happen, but the relationship between Papadopoulos and Mifsud would have massive consequences. After their meeting, Papadopoulos repeated the information he learned about the Clinton dirt to an Australian diplomat. That diplomat reported the information to American authorities. Subsequently, the FBI would open an investigation into possible connections between Russia and the Trump campaign. Though that investigation would remain secret for much of the 2016 campaign, the Clinton emails would become public knowledge. Joseph Mifsud's claims were true. After a Russia-affiliated group hacked into the Democratic National Committee, Russian officials at the direction of Russian President Vladimir Putin gave the hacked materials to WikiLeaks, a multinational media organization. Those emails would be leaked. They would upend the 2016 election, and they would give Trump ammunition to attack the woman he called Crooked Hillary. George Papadopoulos was arguably the spark that ignited a political firestorm. Eventually, the Trump campaign's connection to Russia would be the source of much controversy and federal investigation. In July of 2016, the FBI would officially launch Crossfire Hurricane, the code name for the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. But during the 2016 contest, Crossfire Hurricane would largely remain a secret. Compared to the Republican primary debates, the Democratic primary debates had been placid. Largely, candidates Clinton and Sanders had stuck to debating the issues, sparring over trade, guns, the auto industry, and a myriad of other issues. But outside of the debate halls, the attacks were more forceful. Clinton had called Sanders unprepared to be president. Sanders had called Clinton unqualified. At the outset of the contest, the two candidates were neck and neck. The first Democratic primary in the Iowa caucus had ended in a virtual tie. Clinton had won Iowa with 49.9% to Sanders' 49.6%, but both had walked away with a substantial chunk of delegates. In New Hampshire, Sanders had bounced back with a commanding victory, winning most of New Hampshire's delegates with 60.4% of the vote to Clinton's 38%. South Carolina had swung back the other direction, with Clinton winning the bulk of South Carolina's delegates with 73.5% of the vote. But Clinton put the contest away on Super Tuesday in March, when she scored a massive victory and a sizable delegate haul. In June, as CNN reported, Hillary Clinton clinched the Democratic presidential nomination, according to CNN's delegate and superdelegate count, and would become the first woman in the 240-year history of the United States to lead the presidential ticket of a major political party. But that same month, something else happened. In June of 2016, Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, a multinational media organization, did an interview with a British television network. According to reporting by the New York Times, in the interview, Assange foreshadowed the release of Clinton's emails and made it clear that he hoped to harm Hillary Clinton's chances of winning the presidency. Then, on Friday, July 22, 2016, WikiLeaks released over two publications 44,053 emails and 17,761 attachments from the top of the U.S. Democratic National Committee. The leaks painted a damning portrait of the Democratic National Committee leadership and of the Clinton campaign. As Vox would later report, the Democratic National Committee, or the DNC, was deep in debt. In return for a bailout, DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz gave Hillary Clinton's campaign more potential control over its operations and hiring decisions than was either ethical or wise. The Democratic Party really did favor Hillary Clinton from early in the campaign. The Washington Post reported in the summer of 2016, many of the most damaging emails suggest the committee was actively trying to undermine Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. DNC officials appeared to conspire to raise Bernie Sanders' faith as an issue and press on whether he was an atheist. DNC Chair Wasserman Schultz, who would later resign, called a top Sanders aide a damn liar and claimed that Sanders, a longtime political independent, did not understand the Democratic Party. The email showed clear coordination between members of the Clinton campaign and Democratic Party officials. They also contained a term that is now an active part of the American political lexicon, Bernie Bro. As the Post wrote it, the term Bernie Bro over the course of the campaign became a kind of shorthand for the worst kind of Sanders supporter who couldn't be reasoned with. Bernie Sanders' bid for the Democratic nomination was arguably historic. As The Guardian reported in 2016, Sanders' campaign looks more like small d democratic citizen activism, bypassing political institutions beholden to narrow moneyed interests. Those movements are based outside the Democratic Party, as was Sanders himself, but through grassroots activism, they have forced their issues onto the party's agenda. In the primary, Clinton won 2,842 delegates to Sanders' 1,865. But Sanders won 23 states and 43% of the popular vote, over 13 million votes in all. Though Sanders would eventually endorse Clinton, after the WikiLeaks dump, many of the so-called Bernie Bros were further disillusioned with Clinton and with the Democratic Party as a whole. Meanwhile, many congressional Republicans still had hope that the Benghazi scandal would take Clinton down. But by June of 2016, it seemed that the efforts of congressional Republicans had come up short. As the New York Times reported in June, ending one of the longest, costliest, and most bitterly partisan congressional investigations in history, the House Select Committee on Benghazi issued its final report, finding no new evidence of culpability or wrongdoing by Hillary Clinton. But that same month, in June of 2016, the name Clinton was in the headlines again. But it wasn't candidate Hillary Rodham. In early June, on the tarmac of Sky Harbor International Airport in Phoenix, former President Bill Clinton met with Attorney General Loretta Lynch. According to reporting by Arizona's azcentral.com, that meeting at the Phoenix airport would prove consequential. At the time, Lynch's Department of Justice was investigating Hillary Clinton over her handling of classified information sent through emails. The FBI, under the leadership of then FBI Director James Comey, was leading the Clinton investigation. To many, it seemed that former President Clinton was leaning on the Attorney General in the meeting, hoping to tip the scales in favor of his wife. As a result, then FBI Director James Comey made a fateful decision. Comey determined that he, and not Lynch, would publicly announce the result of the Clinton investigation. In July, FBI Director Comey recommended no criminal charges against Hillary Clinton. In his statement, Comey said that while Clinton did not break the law, her handling of classified material was extremely careless. Comey's decision to make a public statement was unusual and departed from a long-held FBI and Department of Justice protocol of not commenting on investigations. But if Democrats remarked that it might be an unusual breach of protocol, Republicans seized on Comey's criticism, saying that an extremely careless Clinton wasn't fit for high office. Later, Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee, tweeted that the lack of criminal charges proved that the system was rigged. In order to find evidence enough to convict Clinton, Trump figured he needed help, and so he asked,
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
Trump was referring to Clinton emails that were deleted from the private account she used when she was Secretary of State. Those missing emails were the source of much controversy and frothy speculation that was sure to be the center of the conversation at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. Donald Trump hoped to make headlines there, but it was arguably Texas Senator Ted Cruz who stole the limelight when he took the stage.
If you love our country and love your children as much as I know that you do, stand and speak and vote your conscience. Vote for candidates up and down the ticket who you trust to defend our freedom and to be faithful to the Constitution.
During his primetime address, it quickly became clear that Cruz was not going to endorse Trump. The two men had been at odds throughout the campaign. Among other insults, Cruz had called Trump a narcissist and a pathological liar, and Trump had retweeted a meme that mocked the appearance of Ted Cruz's wife, Heidi. In the convention hall, boos and sneers broke out as delegates on the floor began chanting "Say it," hoping to prompt Ted Cruz to endorse Trump. Trump appeared at the back of the hall and egged on the chanting delegates as he pumped his fists into the air. But Cruz's last act of defiance was purely symbolic. The next day, Trump took center stage.
I have joined the political arena so that the powerful can no longer beat up on people who cannot defend themselves. Nobody knows the system better than me, which is why I alone can fix it.
Trump's acceptance speech was a clear appeal not only to his base, but to disenfranchised Bernie Sanders supporters. And Trump made appeals to other key demographics as well, as he announced his running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence. The Washington Post reported that Pence had repeatedly described himself as a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. Picking Pence could easily be seen as an overture to conservative Christians. But if Donald Trump was hoping for a post-convention bump, he would be disappointed, receiving no significant bounce following the convention. The Republican convention did serve to fire up Trump's base, though, and it seemed that Trump's message that Hillary Clinton was a corrupt Washington insider was catching on, as evidenced by the convention crowd repeatedly chanting, "Lock her up." Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's pick for VP was a politically safe choice. She chose Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, indicating, as 538 reported, that Clinton is making the bet that she doesn't need a splashy running mate to beat Donald Trump. Days after the Republican convention at the 2016 Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton took the stage.
And so, my friends, it is with humility, determination, and boundless confidence in America's promise that I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Clinton also had a warning for the country.
Now America is once again at a moment of reckoning. Powerful forces are threatening to pull us apart. It truly is up to us. We have to decide whether we will all work together so we can all rise together. Our country's motto is E pluribus unum. Out of many, we are one. Will we stay true to that motto? Well, we heard Donald Trump's answer last week at his convention. He wants to divide us from the rest of the world and from each other. He's betting that the perils of today's world will blind us to its unlimited promise. He's taken the Republican Party a long way, from morning in America to midnight in America. He wants us to fear the future and fear each other. Well, you know, a great Democratic president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, came up with the perfect rebuke to Trump more than 80 years ago during a much more perilous time. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Inside the hall, Clinton hoped to bring a splintered party together. But outside in the streets, the disunity had been on full display even before the convention started. Large crowds of protesters shouted rival chants of Bernie, Bernie, and Hillary, Hillary. Still, the convention seemed to help the Clinton campaign in the polls. In early August, on average, Clinton led Trump by 7 percentage points, and 538 made Clinton an 83% favorite to win. So coming out of the conventions, Trump went on the attack. On Tuesday, August 9, 2016, at a rally in North Carolina, Trump tried to paint a vote for Hillary Clinton as a vote against the Second Amendment.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know.
Trump was excoriated for his remarks in the press. The New York Times reported, Mr. Trump's remark quickly elicited a wave of condemnation from Democrats, gun control advocates, and others who accused him of suggesting violence against Mrs. Clinton. Bernice A. King, the daughter of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., called Trump's remarks distasteful, disturbing, dangerous. Many moderate Republicans agreed and hoped Trump might soften his rhetoric. But Trump showed he had no intention of doing so when he made a big personnel change, naming Steve Bannon as his new campaign chief. Bannon was what the New York Times called a conservative media provocateur and was chairman of the Breitbart News website, a source of far-right news and opinion that many liberals and traditional conservatives have called misogynistic, xenophobic, and racist. The New York Times predicted that Bannon would alienate moderate voters who typically decide the presidency. But Trump was steadfast. As Trump told Time magazine when asked if he would modify his style, "I think I may do better the other way. They would like to see it a little bit different, a little more modified. I don't like to modify." According to the polls, Trump's refusal to change appeared to be costing him. One poll from late August showed Clinton beating Trump by 10 points. Tim Malloy, assistant director of the Quinnipiac University poll, said that Trump was on a downward spiral amidst faint rumblings of a Hillary Clinton landslide. But that landslide would never come. And in the end, the pundits, the experts, and the polls would be dead wrong. Did you know you can skip ads and promos like these and listen to all episodes of American Elections Wicked Game without interruption by subscribing at intohistory.com? And not only will you be getting the whole series ad-free and bingeable, but you also get access to over a dozen more incredible history podcasts, also all ad-free, like Wild West Extravaganza, a journey back to the fascinating, tumultuous, and often violent world of the American Old West. From famous outlaws like Billy the Kid and Jesse James, to lawmen like Wyatt Earp and Wild Bill Hickok, to trailblazing pioneers and frontiersmen, Wild West Extravaganza tells the true stories of the real-life characters who shaped this iconic era. So saddle up and discover the true history of the American frontier, the good, the bad, and the ugly, ad-free at intohistory.com. Did you know you can skip ads and promos like these and listen to all episodes of American Elections Wicked Game without interruption by subscribing at intohistory.com? And not only will you be getting the whole series ad-free and bingeable, but you also get access to over a dozen more incredible history podcasts, also ad-free, like Her Half of History. Because even though Hillary Clinton may not have made history when she ran for president in 2016, there have always been women who seized power, spied for their country, created artistic masterpieces, even escaped slavery. Her Half of History is perfect for all those who sat in history class and wondered, what were the women doing all this time? Because the answer is a lot. Get Her Half of History, Wicked Game, and many others ad-free at intohistory.com. Subscribe now at intohistory.com. September 2016 was arguably not a good month for Hillary Clinton. On September 2nd, the FBI released documents related to the email inquiry. The documents provided a number of new details about her email server, including, as the New York Times reported, what appeared to be a frantic effort by a computer specialist to delete an archive of her emails even after a congressional committee had requested they be preserved. Then, on September 9th, Clinton made what was perhaps her biggest gaffe of the campaign at a fundraiser in New York City.
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up.
In response, Trump said Clinton had viciously demonized his supporters and suggested that Hillary should be disqualified from office. On September 16th, while appearing to finally back off his previous claim that President Obama was not born a U.S. citizen, he turned the accusation around, saying Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. Clinton responded by asserting that Trump's entire campaign was founded on this outrageous lie. The subject of Trump and lying came up frequently on the campaign trail. Vox reported in September that Donald Trump lies all the time. He doesn't just stretch the truth in the way most politicians do. No, he just says things that aren't true, and he knows it. And a stunning number of people don't seem to care. Clinton had called Trump a liar repeatedly. And in late September, as The Guardian reported, Clinton warned that Donald Trump may overwhelm the first presidential debate on Monday if his habitual lying is left unchallenged by the moderator. This first debate between Clinton and Trump in Hampstead, New York, was the most watched debate in presidential history. And even early on, Things got heated over the question of trade.
And you will see devastation where manufacturing is down 30, 40, sometimes 50%. NAFTA is the worst trade deal maybe ever signed anywhere, but certainly ever signed in this country. And now you want to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
That is just not accurate. I was against it once it was finally negotiated and the terms were laid out. I wrote about that in...
You called it the gold standard. You called it the gold standard of trade deals. You said it's the finest deal you've ever seen.
No.
And then you heard what I said about it, and all of a sudden you were against it.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but that is not the fact.
Many pundits thought that though she was overly rehearsed and robotic, Clinton was head and shoulders better than Trump. But it wasn't Trump's own reality that would get him in trouble next. It was his reality TV star past. On October 7th, 2016, The Washington Post published the now infamous 2005 Access Hollywood tape.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the You can do anything.
For many, Trump's comments to TV host Billy Bush amounted to an admission, or at least an endorsement, of sexual assault. As the New Republic reported, after the recent revelations about Trump's potential tax dodging and the even more decimating impact of Friday's release of his degrading comments about women, Trump went into the second debate with his campaign reeling. But Trump fought back. According to CNN, less than 2 hours before he was to debate Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump live-streamed an appearance with 3 women who have in the past accused former President Bill Clinton of inappropriate sexual behavior, and another woman, Kathy Shelton, whose rapist was defended by Hillary Clinton as a young lawyer. The Clinton camp had been taken completely by surprise. Clinton's communications director, Jennifer Palmieri, fired back at Trump saying, "We are not surprised to see Donald Trump continue his destructive race to the bottom." Then, on the debate stage, Trump defended his lewd comments about women, calling it locker room talk. Clinton went on the attack, saying Trump's comment represents exactly who he is. Trump volleyed, saying, "It's just words, folks. If you look at Bill Clinton, far worse. Mine are words, and his was action." When the subject of his taxes came up, Trump stated, "I pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes, but as soon as my routine audit is finished, I'll release my returns." When CNN moderator Anderson Cooper asked Trump if he took advantage of tax loopholes, Trump responded, "Of course I do, and so do all her donors. A lot of my write-off was depreciation and other things that Hillary, as a senator, allowed." And then, in what was perhaps the most infamous moment of the night, Trump attacked Clinton over her use of a private email server, threatening to investigate her. When Clinton responded, "It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country," Trump retorted, "Because you'd be in jail." In the third and final debate on October 19th in Las Vegas, Nevada, Trump called Clinton a nasty woman. He called illegal immigrants bad hombres. And when what was arguably the most memorable moment of the night, Trump refused to say if he would concede the results of the election if he lost. But in the final month of the campaign, Donald Trump's words wouldn't dominate the headlines. In early October, right on the heels of the release of the Access Hollywood tape, WikiLeaks had started releasing emails from John Podesta, the chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. The Podesta emails were unflattering. In one email to Clinton, he had referred to a group of Latino politicians as needy Latinos. The Podesta leaks added fuel to the fire burning over the Clinton email controversy. But they were not the biggest surprise October had in store. It's the morning of Thursday, October 27th, 2016, 12 days before the presidential election. FBI Director James Comey walks into a conference room at FBI headquarters in Washington. Comey flashes a smile at his team of lawyers, agents, and executives. This team is called the Mid-Year Team. Mid-Year is code name for the FBI's investigation into the use of a private email server by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Back in July, Comey publicly announced that the mid-year investigation was closed. But earlier this morning at 5:30 a.m., Comey received an email from FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe asking for a sit-down with the whole mid-year team. As Comey slides into his seat at the head of the conference room, he starts things off with a joke. "Well, it looks like the band is back together." No one in the room laughs. Comey's smile fades as he sees the somber faces of the mid-year team staring back at him. "Okay, what's up?" Deputy Director Andrew McCabe chimes in. "Let's get started, everyone." McCabe is out of town, so he's dialed into the meeting and starts the discussion off by addressing Jim Baker, the FBI's general counsel. "Jim, do you want to lead things off here?" "Actually, Andrew, I think it's probably best if you drop off the call." "I'm the one who set the meeting." "Yeah, I know. Go ahead and drop off." Days ago, the Wall Street Journal broke a story about Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. The article alleged that Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe's Political Action Committee had given nearly $500,000 to the unsuccessful state Senate campaign of Jill McCabe, Andrew McCabe's wife. The headline of the article read, "Clinton ally aided campaign of FBI official's wife." Knowing the subject of Hillary Clinton is likely to come up in this meeting, Comey seconds Jim's opinion. "I think Jim's right. You don't need to be on this call." "Sure thing, boss." So, does someone want to tell me what all this is about? Anthony Weiner. Back in late August, Huma Abedin, a top Clinton aide, ended her marriage after her husband, New York Congressman Anthony Weiner, was caught sending lewd texts to a 15-year-old girl. Weiner's actions prompted an FBI investigation, and that investigation led the mid-year team to the discovery of hundreds of thousands of emails on Weiner's laptop. Okay, what's in the emails? We don't know what the content is exactly, but we think this may be the missing 3 months of emails. Comey immediately realizes the gravity of the moment. If these are indeed Clinton's missing emails, they might provide a motive for Clinton's use of a private email server, and that might reveal criminal intent. After taking it all in, Comey asks his team a critical question. Do we need to review these emails so we're sure that we've turned over the necessary stones? Oh, we have to pursue this material because, we would do it in any other case. And it is, a pool of evidence that hypothetically, now understandably, is very speculative, but there is the possibility that it could change our outcome. So what are you asking for? We would like your permission to seek a search warrant for Weiner's laptop. Of course, get a warrant. How fast can you review and assess this? This is going to take weeks. There's too much material to do it any faster. Is there any chance we can complete the survey of emails before the election? No, sir. We need to individually read tens of thousands of emails, and it has to be done by us. We're the only ones who knows the context, who know what to look for. After listening to feedback from the entire team, Comey wraps up the meeting. Okay, do it as quickly as you can, but do it well, always well, no matter how long that takes. On October 28th, James Comey sent a letter to Congress advising them that the FBI was reviewing the emails. Members of Congress revealed that information to the public within a matter of minutes. As the New York Times reported, Comey's letter left Mrs. Clinton's team furious and scrambling for explanations while bolstering the spirits of Donald J. Trump after a wave of controversies and Republican defections had led many to write him off. At a campaign rally in New Hampshire, Trump said, "Perhaps finally justice will be done." Clinton made comment in a news conference. "We are calling on the FBI to release all the information it has." And the FBI made quick work. On November 6, 2016, the Times reported, Comey told Congress on Sunday that he had seen no evidence in a recently discovered trove of emails to change his conclusion that Hillary Clinton should face no charges over her handling of classified information. Mr. Comey's announcement just 2 days before the election was an effort to clear the cloud of suspicion he had publicly placed over her presidential campaign. In response, the Clinton camp expressed confidence, saying that they knew all along Clinton would be cleared of wrongdoing. The Trump campaign was frustrated. The Times reported that Kellyanne Conway, Donald Trump's campaign manager, lamented the fact that Mr. Comey had again inserted himself into the election. But even with the email controversy continuing into the last moment, as Election Day drew nearer, most pundits foresaw a Clinton victory. CNN reported that Clinton's odds of winning the presidency went from 78 to 91% on the Monday before Election Day. Fox News predicted a Clinton victory too, writing, "With 1 day before Election Day, Hillary Clinton has a 4 percentage point lead over Donald Trump." And as the votes were counted on Tuesday, November 8, 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by nearly 3 million votes. But Donald Trump won the Electoral College, with 304 electoral votes to Clinton's 227. Trump's Electoral College victory was solidified by wins in the Rust Belt region, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. With his victories there, Trump became America's 45th president, and Clinton became the 5th presidential candidate in American history to win the popular vote but lose the election, joining the ranks of Andrew Jackson, Samuel Tilden, Grover Cleveland, and Al Gore. The day after the election, the New York Times ran an article titled, "Donald Trump is elected president in stunning repudiation of the establishment." The reason why the mainstream media was so wrong in their predictions is the subject of much debate and speculation on both sides of the aisle. In the aftermath of the election, numerous theories were hotly debated. Pundits blamed the media, Benghazi, social media, Facebook's inability to crack down on disinformation, low voter turnout, racism, and the divide between coastal elites and middle America. Some blamed the two major third-party candidates, Libertarian Gary Johnson or the Green Party's Jill Stein, who might have stole from Clinton just enough votes to matter in Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania. Others blamed Bernie Sanders supporters for switching their allegiance to Trump. NPR reported that 1 in 10 Sanders voters ended up voting for Trump. And Newsweek said the impact of those votes was significant. In each of the 3 states that ultimately swung the election for Trump, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Trump's margin of victory over Clinton was smaller than the number of Sanders voters who gave him their vote. CNN commentator Mel Robbins saw yet another reason, writing, "I believe it was overt sexism and often misogyny that in the end kept the presidency from the first female major party presidential candidate." But many other pundits blamed Clinton herself, suggesting she did not put enough effort into winning the Rust Belt, the crucial swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Elaine Kamarck of the Brookings Institute would later write that people who knew Clinton often said, "Great president, lousy candidate." Trump, on the other hand, was a great candidate. Even Hillary admits that it was hard for her to take her eyes off him when she watched the two of them on television. In today's presidential election system, the ability to govern has taken a backseat to the ability to get attention. Victor Davis Hanson of the Hoover Institution saw it differently, writing, "By the end of the third debate, it seemed as if Trump had carjacked the Republican limousine and driven it off a cliff. What was forgotten in all this hysteria was that Trump had brought to the race unique advantages. His advocacy for fair rather than free trade, his insistence on enforcement of federal immigration law, and promises to bring back jobs to the United States brought back formerly disaffected Reagan Democrats, white working-class union members, and blue dog Democrats into the party. Because of that, the formidable wall of rich electoral blue states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and North Carolina crumbled." In her book, What Happened?, Clinton would write, "If just 40,000 people across Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania had changed their minds, I would have won. With a margin like that, everyone can have a pet theory about why I lost. It's difficult to rule anything out. But every theory needs to be tested against the evidence that I was winning until October 28th, when former FBI Director Jim Comey injected emails back into the election." Still, many believe the answer to why Clinton lost was that Donald Trump won. Leanne Caldwell and Benji Sarlin of NBC News wrote, "Trump's power famously came from his silent majority, working-class white voters who felt mocked and ignored by an establishment loosely defined by special interests in Washington, news outlets in New York, and tastemakers in Hollywood. He built trust within that base by abandoning Republican establishment orthodoxy on issues like trade and government spending in favor of a broader nationalist message. Trump's appeals to the economic, cultural, and racial fears of his supporters were widely perceived as offensive to women and minorities. Many GOP leaders warned it would be impossible to win a national election by polarizing the electorate. Trump proved them wrong. One expert who did see Trump's victory coming was Professor Alan Lichtman. Lichtman had developed a system that had successfully predicted every presidential election since 1984. Lichtman called 2016 for Trump. After the election, Lichtman made another prediction. As reported by CNBC, Lichtman believed that Trump's history of playing fast and loose with the law could lead to an impeachment. There was perhaps another contributing factor to the outcome of the 2016 election. After the WikiLeaks email dump in early October, Clinton's campaign chair, John Podesta, had suggested that the Russian government was behind the hack and that the Trump campaign knew about it in advance. Clinton herself had attacked Trump along similar lines. During a debate, Trump had claimed Russian President Vladimir Putin had no respect for Clinton or President Obama. Clinton had replied, well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president. President Trump would repeatedly dismiss the idea that Russian interference affected the outcome of the 2016 election. He would call it a made-up story and a hoax. On the campaign trail, Hillary Clinton had pointed out that 17 intelligence agencies had concluded that Russia was behind the hacking into the DNC. One was the FBI. And at the time of Trump's victory, the FBI was investigating the Trump campaign and had been since the summer of 2016. Unlike the investigations into Hillary Clinton, with Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI had been playing their cards close to the vest. As the New York Times would later report, in the Clinton case, Mr. Comey has said he erred on the side of transparency. But in the face of questions from Congress about the Trump campaign, the FBI declined to tip its hand. The Times reported that when the paper tried to determine the status of the Russia investigation in October of 2016, law enforcement officials cautioned against drawing any conclusions, resulting in a story that significantly played down the case. Comey claimed that it was not fair to compare the two investigations. The Clinton case was winding down. The Russia case was in its early stages. Comey told the Times that he did not make political considerations about who would benefit from each decision. Crossfire Hurricane would continue well into Trump's first term. The FBI would eventually turn over the investigation to an appointed special counsel, former FBI Director Robert Mueller. Over the course of 2 years, Mueller and his team of prosecutors would issue countless subpoenas and interview dozens of witnesses. In the end, Mueller would bring charges against 37 individuals, 6 of whom were associates of Donald Trump. The investigation would put Trump's presidency in the line of fire, and it would be one of many federal, congressional, state, and local investigations into President Trump during his first term. Ultimately, one of those investigations would ensnare Trump in only the 3rd presidential impeachment in United States history. It would set the table for the contentious election of 2020. This is episode 58 of American Elections Wicked Game, 2016, the Omega and the Alpha. On the next episode, the election of 2020. President Donald Trump faces off with President Obama's political wingman, Vice President Joe Biden. In a contest divided by partisan rancor, congressional investigations, and a global pandemic, Donald Trump claims he is the man to keep America great, while Joe Biden says he's the man to win the battle for the soul of America. Icebergs, jagged rocks and rocky straits, mutinies, misfortune, and broadside battles. There are more tales of the sea than survivors to tell them, but the podcast Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs is doing a good job, and you can listen to all episodes of that podcast plus many others, including American Elections Wicked Game, without interruption by subscribing at intohistory.com. Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs is one of my favorites from last year, a podcast about the greatest mishaps, misfortune, and misadventures of the sea. You'll hear stories of corruption, greed, bad intentions, and just plain horrible decision-making that resulted in some of the worst maritime disasters from all over the world. And some of these are more recent than you think. All episodes are ad-free, including bonus content and more at intohistory.com. Subscribe now at intohistory.com. This episode contains reenactments and dramatized details, and while in most cases we can't know exactly what was said, all our dramatizations are based on historical research. American Elections Wicked Game is an Airship production, hosted, edited, and executive produced by me, Lindsey Graham. Audio editing by Molly Bach. Sound design by Derek Behrens. Music by Lindsey Graham. Co-executive produced by Stephen Walters in association with Ritual Productions. Written and researched by Stephen Walters. Fact-checking by Greg Jackson and Ciel Salazar from the podcast History That Doesn't Suck.
On a quiet June morning, an airliner took off from the Seattle area, headed to Anchorage, Alaska. Just after 10 a.m., one of the Northwest Airlines pilots radioed in, asking for permission to change altitude. Within moments, Northwest Airlines Flight 293, with 101 souls on board, soldiers and airmen, along with wives and children, on their way to Cold War assignments in the land of the midnight sun, was gone. In the skies 14,000 feet above the Gulf of Alaska, something went wrong.
They said they've lost radio contact with the plane.
What do you mean it's down? Well, they can't find the plane.
Whatever was left of Flight 293, including everyone on board, was 1.5 miles underwater. Families buried empty caskets and put up backyard memorials as they waited for answers. Answers that never came. What did happen to Flight 293? Was it mechanical failure, human error, or something more sinister?
The DC-7 does not fall out of the sky. If you lost all 4 engines, any pilot will tell you that thing wouldn't just do a nosedive. One of our planes landed with the Sidewinder missile gone.
It's a conspiracy theory.
And why do so many of the victims' loved ones say the U.S. government turned its back on them and tried to forget Flight 293?
Everything about this, my whole life, was hidden. I just think it's a travesty.
It was a living nightmare.
The military was going to have some kind of memorial. We never had a service of any kind.
I'm historian and journalist Felix Bonnell. I've been researching and studying Flight 293 for the past several years. I've interviewed experts and spoken with friends and family members of the 101 souls lost that dark day. Ordinary Americans impacted by extraordinary tragedy who've been searching for answers, searching for healing, and searching for closure. Unsolved Histories, Season 1. What Happened to Flight 293? New from the journalists of KSL Podcasts, searching for answers to some of the greatest mysteries of all time. Coming soon.